The city lights stretched endlessly outside the window of Adisa's car, but his mind wasn't on the beauty of the skyline. His hands gripped the steering wheel, his body tense from another long day at the office. The weight of his responsibilities was heavy, but he carried it all for one reason: Zahara. His wife. His love. The woman he had vowed to give the world. They had built a life together, one of luxury and success. He had spent years working to turn his small business into an empire, making sure she never had to struggle, never had to wish for anything. Everything she wanted, he provided. Yet, despite all his efforts, there was an emptiness growing between them. He felt it every night when he came home late to find Zahara already asleep, or worse, awake but distant, her eyes cold when they used to be filled with love. Tonight was another late night, another deal closed, another step toward the dream they had always talked about. He parked his car in the garage and sighed, running a tired hand down his face before stepping into the penthouse. Zahara was sitting on the couch, one leg crossed over the other, a glass of wine in her hand. She barely looked up when he walked in. "You're late," she said, her voice clipped. "I know," Adisa sighed, placing his briefcase down. "But it was important. The contract finally went through. This deal, this is what we've been working for, Zahara. Everything's coming together." She scoffed, swallowing the wine in her glass. "Everything for who, Adisa?" "Because it sure as hell doesn't feel like it's for me." Adisa frowned, stepping toward her. "What are you talking about? This is all for us. You wanted security, a life where we don't have to worry about anything. I'm giving you that. But what about you? What about us?" Zahara's voice rose slightly, her frustration spilling over. "You work late, you travel for weeks, and when you're home, your mind is still at the office. I'm tired, Adisa. Tired of being alone in a house filled with things I don't even care about anymore." Adisa exhaled, sitting down beside her, reaching for her hand, but she pulled away. "Zahara, I love you. I know I've been busy, but it won't always be like this. Just give me a little more time." She looked at him, her dark eyes searching his face, but whatever she was looking for, she didn't find. She shook her head, stood up, and walked toward the bedroom, leaving him alone in the silence. Adisa ran a hand through his hair and leaned back against the couch. No matter how hard he tried, it felt like he was losing her. And the worst part was, he didn't even know that he already had. Zahara lay in bed staring at her phone. Her emotions were a mess: anger, frustration, loneliness. She hated how Adisa made her feel like she was the villain for wanting more than just a life filled with money. She needed affection, attention, passion. Her phone vibrated. A message. "Khamari, you're too beautiful to be spending another night alone." Her lips parted slightly, her breath catching. Khamari. He had been chasing her for months, relentless in his pursuit. He was everything Adisa wasn't: attentive, charming, and always present. He knew how to make her feel wanted, how to say the right things at the right time. She stared at the message, knowing she should ignore it. But she didn't. "Zahara, maybe you're right." It didn't take long for the next reply to come. "Khamari, come see me." She hesitated, but deep down, she already knew what she was going to do. She climbed out of bed, her heart pounding. In the darkness of the room, she could hear Adisa's steady breathing from the living room. He had probably fallen asleep on the couch. Again. Her fingers hovered over the screen. Then, with a deep breath, she grabbed her coat, slipped on her heels, and walked out the door. In another part of the city, Khamari leaned back in his leather chair, a smirk on his lips. He had always admired Zahara from a distance at first, then with more intent once he realized how easy it was to slip into the cracks of her marriage. He poured himself a drink, glancing at the time. Any minute now, she would be on her way. Adisa thought he was untouchable. That his wealth and success made him better than everyone else. But Khamari knew the truth. No man was invincible. And tonight he was about to take the one thing Adisa had always assumed was his. His wife. The soft hum of the engine filled the quiet night as Zahara drove through the dimly lit streets of the city. Her hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, her heart racing in her chest. She told herself she was just going to talk, to clear her head, to escape the suffocating emptiness of her home. But deep down, she knew that was a lie. Her phone buzzed beside her, and she glanced at the screen. Khamari, I'm waiting, beautiful. A shiver ran down her spine. Excitement. Guilt. Desire. It was all tangled together in a mess she didn't have the strength to sort through anymore. She pulled up to the entrance of Khamari's luxury penthouse, where a valet quickly opened her door. She stepped out, adjusting the silk dress she had thrown on before leaving. The doorman recognized her immediately and let her through without question. The elevator ride felt longer than it should have, each second making her pulse pound louder in her ears. When the doors finally opened, Khamari stood there, leaning against the wall, his dark eyes drinking her in like she was the only thing that existed in the world. You came, he said, his deep voice smooth as silk. Zahara swallowed hard, hesitating for a moment before stepping out of the elevator. I shouldn't be here. But you are. Khamari smirked, stepping closer. And I know why. Her breath hitched as he reached out, his fingers lightly tracing her jawline. You don't have to pretend, Zahara. I see you. I know what you need. Her body betrayed her, leaning into his touch. Khamari, this isn't right. Then why haven't you left? Silence. Because she didn't want to. Before she could find the strength to walk away, Khamari cupped her face and kissed her. It was different from the way Adisa kissed her. This was urgent, hungry, reckless. She melted into it, her fingers gripping his shoulders as he pulled her closer. For the first time in a long time, she felt wanted. And she gave in. Meanwhile, Adisa woke up to the soft chime of his phone. Groggy, he rubbed his face and reached for the device. A frown formed as he saw the time, 2:14 a.m. His heart sank when he noticed Zahara wasn't in bed. Maybe she had trouble sleeping. Maybe she was in the kitchen. But as he walked through the apartment, calling her name, he was met with nothing but silence. His chest tightened. Something wasn't right. He checked his phone again, scrolling through their last messages. No missed calls. No texts. He dialed her number. It rang. And rang. Then went to voicemail. Adisa's jaw clenched as unease settled in his gut. Zahara never left the house this late, not without telling him. He paced the living room, trying to think rationally. Maybe she was with a friend. Maybe she needed air. But a small, cruel voice whispered something else in his mind. What if she's with someone else? He shook his head, pushing the thought away. Zahara wouldn't do that. Would she? Desperate for answers, he grabbed his keys and headed to the only person he suspected could be involved. Khamari. Back at Khamari's penthouse. Zahara lay beneath silk sheets, her body still tangled with Khamari's. The afterglow of their betrayal was still warm, but in the quiet moments that followed, guilt started creeping in. What had she done? Khamari propped himself up on his elbow, studying her with a satisfied smirk. Regrets already. She turned away, pulling the sheets over her bare shoulders. This can't happen again. Khamari chuckled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. You keep saying that, but I think we both know the truth. Before she could respond, the sound of loud, forceful knocking echoed through the penthouse. Bang! 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 Her blood ran cold. Khamari's smirk vanished. He sat up, his expression darkening. Stay here. Zahara clutched the sheets to her chest, her heart hammering against her ribs as Khamari threw on a robe and walked to the door. When he opened it, Adisa stood there, his eyes blazing with fury. Neither man spoke for a moment. The tension was suffocating. Adisa's gaze flickered past Khamari, searching. And then, he saw her. Zahara. Sitting on the edge of the bed. Half covered in sheets. Her face frozen in shock. Something inside Adisa shattered. You. His voice was barely above a whisper, but it was filled with something dangerous. You were with him. Zahara's lips parted, but no words came out. Khamari smirked. Guess you figured it out, huh? Before another word could be said, Adisa's fist crashed into Khamari's jaw. The war had just begun. Adisa's fist connected with Khamari's jaw, sending him stumbling back into the penthouse. A table lamp crashed to the floor, shattering into pieces as Khamari regained his footing, wiping a smear of blood from his lip. Big mistake, Khamari muttered, his smirk vanishing. Zahara gasped, wrapping the sheets tighter around herself as Adisa lunged at Khamari again, grabbing him by the collar. You touched my wife. Adisa's voice trembled with rage. You dare. Khamari shoved him off, his expression shifting from amusement to cold arrogance. She came to me, he sneered, straightening his robe. And from the way she was screaming my name, I'd say she had no regrets. Adisa saw red. He swung again, but this time Khamari was ready, dodging and countering with a punch to Adisa's ribs. The pain barely registered. All he could see was Zahara half-naked in another man's bed. His wife. The woman he had sacrificed everything for. Adisa, stop. Zahara's voice cut through the chaos. But Adisa wasn't listening. He grabbed Khamari by the throat and slammed him against the wall. You think this is a game? His voice was raw, his fingers tightening around Khamari's neck. You come after my business, my wife, and you think you'll walk away from this. Khamari coughed, prying at Adisa's grip. Maybe if you weren't so busy chasing money, she wouldn't have come to me. Adisa froze. Those words cut deeper than any punch. His grip faltered just enough for Khamari to shove him off and deliver a brutal kick to his stomach. Adisa staggered back, his breathing ragged. Get out, Khamari said, his voice deadly calm. You've already lost. Adisa's fist clenched, but the fight drained from his body. He looked past Khamari at the woman he had once believed was his forever. Zahara stood there, wrapped in sheets, tears streaming down her face. But she hadn't left. She hadn't run after him. She had made her choice. The realization hit him like a death blow. Without another word, Adisa turned and walked out the door, slamming it shut behind him. Adisa drove through the city streets in silence. The weight of what had just happened pressed down on his chest, suffocating him. His mind replayed everything, every late night, every missed dinner, every moment he had chosen work over Zahara, believing he was doing it for her. Had he been blind? Had he lost her long before tonight? He gripped the steering wheel tighter, his knuckles turning white. No. This wasn't his fault. He had been faithful. He had worked himself to the bone to give Zahara the life she wanted. He had trusted her. And she had betrayed him. His jaw tightened. This wasn't over. Zahara sat on the edge of Khamari's bed, staring at the door Adisa had just walked out of. Her hands trembled as she wiped at her tear-streaked face. What had she done? Khamari sat beside her, running a hand through his hair. You knew this would happen, he said. He was never going to put you first. Zahara swallowed the lump in her throat. I never wanted to hurt him. Khamari scoffed. Then maybe you shouldn't have been in my bed. She flinched at his words, but he wasn't wrong. She had made this choice. But why didn't it feel like victory? Why did she feel like she had just destroyed something she could never fix? She reached for her phone, her fingers hesitating over Adisa's number. Would he ever forgive her? Did she even deserve forgiveness? Khamari watched her, his expression unreadable. He won't take you back, he said after a moment. Not after this. Zahara closed her eyes. She wasn't sure if that was the worst part, or the part she had always feared was coming. By the time Adisa arrived home, his mind was already moving past the pain. Now, it was about payback. He poured himself a glass of whiskey, his hands steady despite the storm inside him. He had spent years building his empire, and Khamari had spent just as long trying to tear it down. And now, he had taken the one thing Adisa had sworn to protect. Adisa smirked bitterly. Fine. If Khamari wanted war, he would get it. And Zahara. She would see exactly what she had lost. Adisa had always been a patient man. A strategist. Every move he made in business was calculated, precise, unstoppable. That was how he built his empire. That was how he crushed his competition. And now, Khamari was no longer just competition. He was an enemy. The city lights blurred through the whiskey in his glass as he stood by the floor-to-ceiling window of his penthouse, his mind spinning with thoughts of revenge. Khamari had taken his wife. He had taken the one thing Adisa had built his world around. Now, Adisa would take everything from him. He grabbed his phone, dialing a number. It rang twice before a deep voice answered. Mr. Adisa. I was wondering when you'd call. I want everything on Khamari, Adisa said, his voice ice. Every dirty deal. Every weakness. Every debt. And I want it now. The man on the other end chuckled. You always pay well, Adisa. I'll have what you need by morning. Adisa ended the call. His fingers tightened around the glass before he hurled it against the wall, watching it shatter. He had spent years securing his future for Zahara, for the family he thought they would build together. And she had thrown it all away. He wasn't going to beg her to come back. She would regret ever betraying him. Zahara sat on the balcony of Khamari's penthouse, staring out at the city. The night breeze carried the scent of expensive cigars and cologne, mixing with the bitterness in her chest. You're thinking about him, aren't you? She turned to see Khamari leaning against the doorway, a knowing smirk on his lips. He was always so sure of himself, so cocky. It had been exciting at first, thrilling to feel desired in a way she hadn't in years. But now it felt hollow. I made my choice, she said, more to herself than to him. That you did. Khamari stepped closer, sliding an arm around her waist. And trust me, Zahara, you won't regret it. With me, you get more than just love. You get power. You get freedom. Adisa caged you in his ambitions. I'll give you the world. But what if all she had wanted was Adisa? The man who had worked himself to the bone to make her dreams come true. The man who had loved her. She swallowed hard. What if I made a mistake? Khamari's grip on her waist tightened slightly before he pulled away, his eyes turning cold. Don't be stupid, Zahara, he said sharply. You knew what you were doing when you crawled into my bed. Adisa won't take you back, and you won't survive out there alone. So unless you want to spend the rest of your life regretting something you can't undo, I suggest you move forward. Zahara felt her stomach twist. The way he spoke to her was so different from the man who had once whispered sweet words in her ear. Maybe Adisa had been too focused on business, but Khamari. He had been focused on winning. And now that he had won, did she even matter anymore? The next morning, Khamari arrived at his office only to find his entire executive board in chaos. His secretary looked pale as she rushed up to him. "Sir, we have a problem." "Then fix it," Khamari snapped, pushing past her. But when he stepped into his office, he froze. Adisa was already there, sitting comfortably in Khamari's chair, flipping through a folder. "You really should invest in better security," Adisa said without looking up. Khamari's fists clenched. "Get the hell out of my office." Adisa finally met his gaze, and Khamari saw something in his eyes that made his stomach drop. Not anger. Not heartbreak. Cold, calculated distraction. "I did some digging," Adisa said, tossing the folder onto the desk. "You've been making a lot of risky deals, Khamari. Illegal deals. The kind that put men like you behind bars." Khamari's smirk faltered. "That's bullshit," he spat. Adisa leaned forward, his voice calm. "Is it?" He pointed at the folder. "Because this paperwork says otherwise. You've been laundering money through fake companies. Falsifying contracts. And I have proof. Enough to send you to prison." Khamari grabbed the folder and flipped through it, his hands shaking. "You think you can take me down?" he growled. Adisa stood, buttoning his suit jacket. "I already have." Khamari lunged at him, but Adisa dodged effortlessly, grabbing Khamari by the collar and slamming him against the desk. "You took my wife," Adisa whispered, his voice deadly. "And now I'm taking your empire. By the time I'm done, you'll have nothing." He released Khamari and straightened his jacket. "Enjoy the downfall, Khamari. You deserve it." With that, he walked out, leaving Khamari standing in the ruins of his own making. Zahara was sitting in the penthouse, scrolling through her phone when she saw the headline. "Business mogul Khamari under investigation for fraud, possible arrest warrant issued." Her heart stopped. She barely had time to process it before Khamari stormed in, his face dark with fury. "You did this," he snarled, his voice dangerously low. Zahara's breath hitched. "What?" "No." "You hesitated," he growled, stepping closer. "I saw it last night. You were thinking about Adisa. And now, the moment I start losing everything, you expect me to believe it's a coincidence." Zahara shook her head. "I had nothing to do with this, Khamari." He grabbed her wrist, his grip rough. "If I go down, Zahara, I won't go down alone." She yanked her arm free, fear creeping into her chest. This wasn't the man she had fallen for. This was someone else. Someone dangerous. And she had chosen him over the one man who had truly loved her. Her hands trembled as she backed away. She had made a mistake. A terrible mistake. And now, she had no idea how to fix it. The night air was heavy with tension as Zahara stepped out of Khamari's penthouse for the last time. She had left everything behind, her designer bags, the expensive jewelry he had showered her with, even the illusion that she had made the right choice. All she carried was her phone and a heart full of regret. She didn't know where to go. Adisa wouldn't take her back. She knew that much. Even if he still loved her, even if part of him still longed for the woman he had once believed in, she had destroyed that trust. And yet, her feet carried her toward him. Toward home. Adisa was in his office, sitting in the dim glow of his desk lamp. The scent of whiskey lingered in the air, but he wasn't drinking. Not tonight. His empire was intact. Stronger, even. Khamari was finished, his assets frozen, his board members abandoning him like a sinking ship. Soon, he would have nothing left. Victory should have felt sweet. But as Adisa stared at the divorce papers sitting on his desk, he felt nothing at all. A knock at the door. Soft, hesitant. He didn't need to ask who it was. Slowly, he stood and walked toward the door, opening it to find Zahara standing there. Her once flawless makeup was smudged, her eyes filled with something raw and broken. Adisa. Her voice trembled. He stared at her, silent. I was wrong, she whispered. I thought you didn't love me, but you did. I see that now. She swallowed hard, blinking back tears. And I betrayed you. Adisa clenched his jaw. Yes. You did. I don't expect forgiveness, she said quickly. I needed to tell you. To tell you that I was blinded by everything I thought I wanted. And I lost the only man who ever truly cared for me. A long silence stretched between them. Then Adisa exhaled, stepping back. Goodbye, Zahara. Her breath hitched. Adisa, please. But he had already closed the door. And this time, he wouldn't open it again.